The first pale light of dawn crept through the attic window, falling across the frail figure of Alara. She lay curled on a thin straw mattress, her blanket more holes than fabric. The chill of early spring bit at her skin. With a sigh, she sat up, brushing dust from her tangled dark hair. Downstairs, a shrill voice pierced the silence. "Alara, are you still asleep? Lazy girl, get down here and fetch water before the sun rises." Her stepmother's voice. Alara hurried down the creaking stairs, barefoot, her patched dress dragging behind her. Marcia sat at the kitchen table, dressed far finer than the family's meager income should have allowed, gold rings gleaming on her fingers. Her own daughter, Celine, lounged beside her, sipping warm milk and smirking at Alara's bedraggled appearance. "Look at her," Marcia sneered. 17 years old and still useless. Can't even bring in a decent dowry. A waste of food. Alara lowered her gaze. She had learned long ago that speaking back only brought harsher punishments. Her father, once a proud merchant, now lay bedridden upstairs, too weak to protect her. Day after day, Alara endured endless chores and cutting words. She bore it in silence, though inside her heart ached. She remembered her mother's gentle hands, her laughter, her songs. But those memories were fading, drowned by Marcia's cruelty. That morning, as Alara trudged to the well with heavy buckets, she noticed a figure sitting on a roadside stone. He looked ragged, his coat torn, hair unkempt, boots worn through. A beggar, perhaps, but his eyes, gray, steady, watchful, followed her with quiet intensity. She hesitated, then gave him a small nod. To her surprise, he returned it with the faintest smile before looking away. The encounter lingered in her thoughts as she worked through the day. And when evening came, she overheard Marcia whispering to a visiting trader. "If only I could rid myself of the girl," Marcia said, her voice thick with disdain. "She's a mouth to feed and nothing more." The trader chuckled cruelly. "Sell her, then. There are always men in the city who'll pay for a young woman, even a plain one." Alara's stomach twisted. The next morning, fate delivered an answer Marcia could not resist. As Alara scrubbed the courtyard stones, Marcia's sharp voice rang out. "You there," she called. Alara looked up and froze. Marcia was speaking to the same ragged stranger she had seen at the well. "Do you need a girl to work for you?" Marcia said slyly. "Strong back, simple mind. I'll give her cheap. She's only a stepdaughter, no real kin to me." Alara's brush slipped from her hands. Her heart hammered in her chest. The stranger tilted his head. "You would sell her?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Why not?" Marcia scoffed. "She's no use here. If you can feed her, she's yours. A few coins should be enough." Alara's throat closed. She wanted to scream, to beg, but Marcia's cold eyes warned her into silence. The man studied her for a long moment. His gaze was not cruel, not greedy, but searching. Finally, he reached into his coat and drew out several gold coins. They glimmered brightly in Marcia's palm. "Far too much for any beggar to have. I'll take her," he said simply. Marcia's lips curled into a triumphant smile. Done. And just like that, Alara's fate was sealed. She was handed off like livestock, her stepmother's laughter ringing behind her as she followed the stranger away from the only home she had ever known. Dash dash dash. They walked in silence along the dirt road, the village shrinking in the distance. Alara clutched a small bundle of clothes, her pulse racing with fear. At last, the man spoke. "You're afraid," he said quietly. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know where you're taking me." "To safety," he replied. His tone carried weight, like a promise. After hours of walking, they reached a cabin nestled at the edge of a forest. To Alara's astonishment, it was warm, clean, and well stocked with food. Nothing about it fit the image of a vagrant's dwelling. "You can rest here," he told her. "You're not my servant. No one will harm you under my roof." Confusion warred with relief in her heart. Why did you buy me?" He looked at her steadily. "Not to own you, to free you." Dash dash dash. Days passed. The man introduced himself as Kale. Though his clothes were rough, his speech was refined, his manners deliberate. He spoke with ease about trade routes, politics, and distant cities. And he listened when Alara spoke, truly listened, as no one else ever had. For the first time in years, Alara felt seen. One evening, as firelight flickered across the cabin walls, she dared to ask the question that had burned inside her. "Who are you, really?" Kale's gray eyes held hers. Slowly, he said, "I am Kale Ardent." The name struck her like thunder. Even in her small village, Ardent Enterprises was known, a vast trading empire, ships that sailed every sea, factories that produced wealth beyond imagining. "You're a merchant lord," she whispered. "A little more than that," he said with a faint smile. "CEO, they call me. I built the company from nothing. But wealth attracts wolves. Betrayal taught me that gold reveals false hearts. So I walked away, for a time. I chose rags, to see the world without riches." Alara's mind spun. The man her stepmother had treated as worthless was, in truth, one of the most powerful men in the land. Kale's expression softened. "And when I saw you, a girl treated like a burden, yet enduring with quiet strength, I knew you were worth more than all the coins Marcia so eagerly grabbed." Tears welled in her eyes. No one had ever spoken of her worth before. Under Kale's guidance, Alara flourished. He taught her to read ledgers, to calculate trade routes, to manage accounts. "Your mind is sharp," he told her. "Sharper than many who sit in offices of marble. But peace is never safe from greed." News reached Marcia's ears of Kale's true identity. Driven by avarice, she appeared at his estate weeks later, cloaked in false sweetness. "My dearest Alara," she cried, sweeping into the grand hall. "I feared for you, child. Imagine my relief to see you here, cared for by such a generous man." Alara stiffened. For years she had endured her stepmother's cruelty in silence. But now, with Kale beside her, she found her voice. "You sold me like cattle, Marcia. Do not dare to pretend it was love." Marcia faltered, but quickly recovered, flashing a brittle smile. "Nonsense. I only thought it best for you. Surely you'll forgive a mother's mistake." Kale rose from his seat. In that moment, the air itself seemed to shift. No longer the ragged stranger, he stood with the commanding presence of a man whose word could move nations. "Enough," he said, his tone low and cold. "You traded her life for gold. Do not insult her further with lies." Marcia paled, recognizing him at last. Kale's gaze was like steel. "Leave this place. Should you seek to harm her again, you will answer to me, and to the law." For once, Marcia was silent. She turned on her heel and fled, her ambition crumbling to dust. When she was gone, Alara's knees trembled. Kale was at her side in an instant, steadying her with gentle hands. "You are free now," he said softly. "Free to choose your own path." She looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "And if I choose to stay?" His expression warmed, unguarded. "Then I will count myself the luckiest man alive." For the first time in years, Alara felt hope bloom within her. No longer a burden, no longer a shadow in her own home, she was seen, cherished, and free. And as she stood beside Kale, she realized something her stepmother would never understand. True worth was never measured in coins, but in the courage to endure, and the rare souls who saw value where others saw none. The dawn crept through the attic window, pale and cold. Alara stirred on her straw mattress, shivering beneath a blanket more patches than fabric. She sat up, rubbing her tired eyes, and braced herself for the day ahead. "Alara," came the shrill cry from below. "Get down here, you useless girl." Her stepmother's voice. Alara scrambled down the creaking stairs barefoot, tugging at the frayed hem of her dress. In the kitchen, Marcia sat at the table in a gown far too fine for their modest home, golden rings glinting on her fingers. Her daughter Celine, pampered and spoiled, sipped warm milk by her side. "You're 17 now," Marcia sneered, looking Alara over with contempt. "No beauty, no dowry. Just a burden eating food you don't deserve." Alara's cheeks burned, but she said nothing. She had learned silence was safer. Her father lay bedridden upstairs, too weak to intervene. Once a thriving merchant, his illness had left him powerless, and Marcia had seized control of everything. Later that morning, Alara carried buckets from the well. The weight dug into her arms, but she pressed on. At the roadside, she noticed a figure slouched on a stone. He looked like a vagrant, coat tattered, boots worn thin. Yet his gray eyes were piercing, steady, following her with an intensity that unsettled her. She gave him a shy nod. To her surprise, he returned the gesture with the faintest of smiles before looking away. That evening, as Alara scrubbed the courtyard, she overheard Marcia speaking to a visiting trader. "If only I could rid myself of that girl," Marcia hissed. "She's no use to me." The trader chuckled darkly. "Sell her. Even plain girls fetch a price." Alara's stomach twisted. The next day, fate came knocking. As Alara knelt, scouring the stones, Marcia's voice rang out. "You there," she barked. Alara looked up and froze. Marcia was addressing the same ragged stranger from the well. You need a girl to work for you. Marcia said smoothly. Strong back, simple mind. Cheap. She's just a stepdaughter, nothing of mine. Alara's heart thundered. She wanted to scream, to run, but Marcia's cold glare pinned her in place. The man tilted his head. You would sell her. His voice was calm, but something sharp lurked beneath. Why not? Marcia scoffed. She's useless here. A few coins is more than she's worth. Alara's breath caught. The man studied her for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those eyes, softened slightly when they met hers. Then he reached into his coat and produced several gleaming gold coins. Far too much for a beggar to carry. I'll take her, he said quietly. Marcia snatched the gold with greedy fingers. Done. She's yours. As Alara followed the stranger away, clutching her small bundle of belongings, her stepmother's laughter rang in her ears. You'll thank me one day, Alara. Marcia called mockingly. Better a stranger's problem than mine. Alara's throat ached with unshed tears. She cast one desperate glance at her father's shuttered window. The curtain never moved. The man walked in silence, the village fading behind them. Finally, he spoke. You're frightened, he said. She nodded. I don't know where you're taking me. To safety, he replied. His tone carried a quiet weight, like a vow. But Alara could not shake her fear. Who was this stranger who paid gold for a girl no one wanted? Part 2. The revelation approximately equals 750 words. The man, he called himself Kale, led Alara to a cabin on the edge of the forest. Warmth greeted her as he opened the door. A fire crackled in the hearth, shelves were lined with food, and the air smelled faintly of cedar. This is where you'll stay, Kale said. No one will hurt you here. Alara sat stiffly on a chair, clutching her bundle. Why did you buy me? Kale looked at her steadily. Not to own you. To free you. His words were strange, but something in his voice made her believe him. Over the days that followed, Kale revealed more of himself. Despite his ragged clothes, his manner was refined. He spoke with knowledge of distant cities, of trade routes, of politics. He listened when Alara spoke, asking about her dreams, her mother, her childhood. No one had ever asked before. One evening, as the firelight flickered, Alara found the courage to ask the question that burned in her mind. Who are you really? Kale studied her a moment, then said quietly, I am Kale Ardent. The name hit her like thunder. Even in her remote village, Ardent Enterprises was known, ships on every sea, markets in every province, an empire of trade. You're a merchant lord, she whispered. He smiled faintly. CEO, yes. I built the company from nothing. But wealth attracts parasites. People see only gold, never the man behind it. So I shed it all for a time. I chose rags, to see truth in the world's eyes. Alara's mind spun. The man her stepmother had dismissed as worthless was, in truth, one of the wealthiest men alive. Kale's voice softened. And when I saw you, silent, enduring cruelty with dignity, I knew you were worth more than gold. So I paid for you. Not to bind you, but to set you free. Tears filled Alara's eyes. No one had ever spoken of her worth before. Weeks passed. Under Kale's care, Alara flourished. He taught her to read ledgers, to manage accounts, to calculate profits. A sharp mind, he told her, is more valuable than beauty. For the first time, Alara felt her life had meaning. But greed does not die quietly. News of Kale's true identity reached Marcia. Hungry for more, she arrived at his estate weeks later, her face a mask of false sweetness. My darling Alara, she cried, sweeping into the hall. I feared for you, child. Imagine my relief to see you safe, cared for by such a man. Alara's heart clenched. She had dreamed of this moment, of finally speaking back. You sold me for gold, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Do not pretend it was love. Marcia faltered, then tried to recover. Nonsense. I only thought it best. Enough. Kale's voice cut like steel. Rising, he stood not as the ragged man she first saw, but as the commanding figure whose name carried weight across kingdoms. You sold her life without hesitation. She owes you nothing. If you seek to harm her again, you will answer to me, and to the law. Marcia paled, realizing at last who he was. Without another word, she turned and fled, her ambitions collapsing like sand. When she was gone, Alara swayed with the weight of it all. Kale was at her side instantly, steadying her with gentle hands. You are free now, he whispered. Free to choose your own path. She looked up at him, eyes shining. And if I choose to stay, a smile softened his face. Then I will count myself the luckiest man alive. In that moment, Alara felt something she had not known in years, hope. Not as someone's servant, not as someone's burden, but as herself, valued and cherished. And so the girl once sold for coins discovered her true worth beside the man who had disguised himself as poor, yet proved richer in spirit than anyone she had ever known.